Alright, before we start the main part of this video, I just want to give you an update on the Philando Castile shooting. Recently, his girlfriend was outside the governor's mansion and went into detail on how the stop proceeded.
At the time, as our hands is in the air, he asks for license and registration. My boyfriend carries all his information in a thick wallet in his right side back pocket. As he's reaching for his back pocket wallet, he lets the officer know, "Officer, I have a firearm on me."
All right, right there she says, as he's reaching for his wallet, he tells the officer that he has a firearm on him, which is the opposite thing he should have done. He should have had his hands in plain view on the steering wheel, then told the officer that he has a firearm and a permit to carry. Then the officer would tell him how he should go about showing him the ID and permit. So she asks, how can you not move when you ask for a license and registration? True, you have to move to get your license and registration when the cop asks you for it if you already don't have it out. Usually cops, when they pull you over, they're in the car for a few minutes before they walk up to the driver's side. In that time, a person should be able to get their license, registration, and if they're carrying, their concealed carry license ready for the officer in their hands with their hands on the wheel when the officer shows up. He, however, did not. And he made the obviously fatal mistake of telling the officer he was armed as he was reaching for his wallet, taking his hands out of plain view. It's just not smart. Marissa Jane Johnson, one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, said that saying all lives matter is racist. What? So I guess you would call Philando's girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, a racist.
And not Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. Every single life out here matters. No matter the color, the race, the nationality, we all deserve to be heard.
Also an update to the Alton Sterling case. He was not approached by police for selling bootleg CDs. There was actually a homeless man who asked him for some money or spare change. Mr. Sterling decided to pull out his gun and tell him to get out of here. But he was a felon and not able to be in possession of a firearm. Now, people say it's racist to expose his criminal record because that was the past. It has nothing to do with the present at that moment. But what the past does show is a pattern. History repeats itself. But let's get off the subject of those two events and talk about Dallas. Now, the Dallas shooter was racially motivated. He said that he wanted to kill white people, especially white cops. And that didn't end up good for his well-being. Now, the shooting in Dallas happened during a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest. But the Black Lives Matter group want to distance themselves away from the shooter, saying that he wasn't part of their organization. But they kind of contradict themselves right then and there. It's like a don't blame all of us for the actions of that shooter. Kind of like they're blaming all cops for the actions of the cops in the Philando Castile and Alton Sterling shootings. See the contradiction? Now, when it comes to Dallas and the way the Dallas police handled it, I'm on the fence with that. Here's the reason. They used a bomb squad robot. They attached some C4 explosives to it, ran it up to him, and detonated it, right? I understand the reasoning for doing it. They didn't want to endanger any more lives of policemen, but I think it actually sets a dangerous precedent legally and constitutionally, okay? And here's my reasoning. Some people say, well, what's the difference between doing that or doing a SWAT raid where they kill him, or placing a sniper in the position where you could shoot him? And my answer is simple. A SWAT raid or a sniper taking him out, there's a chance that they could save his life. Now, I know people don't want to hear about that, but even the guilty, the obviously guilty, deserve their day in court, due process. So if they could attach C4 to the end of that robot, they could have attached a couple of flashbang grenades, drove it right up to him, and detonated those. Now, flashbangs stun and disorient people, but they can still kill. I remember when I first got to Afghanistan, there was a ranger that was moving his gear from one place to another, and he inadvertently pulled a pin on one of his flashbang grenades, and it blew off his leg and arm because he was so close. And he ended up dying on the way to Germany to save his life. But in this case, even though he was obviously guilty, he still deserved his day in court. Another question, why? Well, because of due process. And here's the thing, due process and the Fifth Amendment.
I plead the Fifth.
They're not there so that guilty people can get away with stuff. They're there to protect the innocent people from the state. So yes, some people that are guilty of doing whatever they did, they may get off through the court system.
I got your sentence reduced to a month, buddy.
And there might be people that are innocent that go through the court system that still get convicted, but it gives them a chance. Now, obviously, this guy didn't deserve a chance, but he's still afforded that right. When you start taking rights away from people, even the guilty ones, then it becomes easier to take the rights from innocent people. Another thing about Dallas is I've seen a lot of Black Americans, not really on my friends list, but on friends lists of my friends. I've seen them change their profile pic to the pic of the Dallas shooter in his dashiki with his fist raised up, saying, "Rest in peace." Now, the person I saw with that profile pic, I asked him if he thought the Dallas shooter was justified in killing those 5 police officers. And his answer was absolutely.
I don't feel sad for the officers that lost their lives. And I know that that's really not my heart. I value human life and I want to feel sad for them, but I can't help but feeling like the shooter was a martyr. I don't know what else to say. It's a lot to deal with, and I know I'm not the only one feeling like this.
What? And it's crazy. You can't blame the son for the actions of the father because they're 2 completely different individuals. The son may not have the same outlook and views on life as his father does. So blaming him for something that his father did is completely wrong. But this is what is being brought up in the media now with the Black Lives Matter movement. They want to blame all white people for what their fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers suffered through. Like my dad. My dad grew up in Jackson, Mississippi during the 50s and 60s. He saw real hate. He saw real racism. The Black Lives Matter movement is doing a real disservice to the people who fought and died for their own rights in the civil rights movement. I don't think Martin Luther King would be very happy with how they've been going about their protests. They want to say that they're peaceful.
If they go about their burden of whatever they said you're doing, you pull your pussy out and you fucking bust at it. You pull your pussy out and you bust at it. When we move with the Panthers, trust me, when you see me move, I'm moving in violence.
This doesn't sound very peaceful. But then what they want to say is he doesn't speak for the whole movement. He speaks for himself. It's that contradiction again, where you can't blame his actions or his words. You can't lump us all into that category. But yet they want to do that very same thing when it comes to white people. Now, a cousin of mine brought up PTSD. And even though PTSD is known throughout the veteran community, not everyone gets PTSD. Kind of subjective. She talked about a study she read about how Black Americans today suffer from PTSD. And this PTSD is from slavery. Yes. This theory suggests that I myself have a little bit of PTSD stemming back all the way to the slavery days, meaning it's been passed along the generation, kind of a genetic memory. If that's the case, every culture, every race on earth should suffer from PTSD. Every culture and every race has been a slave to another at some point in time in our history. When it comes to slavery, around only 10% of all the slave trades from West Africa made it to America. The rest went to Central and South America and the Caribbean. The vast majority of African slaves went to Brazil. America wasn't the last country to abolish slavery. In fact, if you believe the Civil War was fought over slavery specifically, we're the only country to go to war with ourselves to end it. Every other country has just stopped doing it. Let's think about the show Roots. The new series Roots that recently came out, it shows what actually happened. Other Africans that were specifically slave traders would capture other Black Africans and sell them to the European slave traders. Also, what they really didn't mention in the Roots, just barely showed it, was that most of them were Muslim. And I think the last few countries to abolish slavery were countries that was made up of predominantly Muslims, or actually an Islamic state. One of the statistics thrown out there is how there are more whites killed every year by police than there are blacks killed every year by police. And that is true. But what it doesn't cover is the ratios to population to deaths, where there are more white Americans than there are Black Americans. So therefore the ratio is higher for blacks being killed by police. Now, why is this? I think it has everything to do with Black American culture. I remember growing up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin during the 80s and 90s. And that's when gangster rap first started and became very popular. I remember listening to it. I remember wanting to be a part of a gang as a young kid because I would go to church and I would see the guys in the youth group who were actually a part of gangs. I would look up to them like they were so cool when they were in fact in youth group to try and get away from all the crap that they're dealing with. When it comes to why the ratio is so high among Black Americans is from the distrust of police. I see how it can be valid. During the 50s and 60s, Black people didn't trust the white police. Obviously, a lot has changed since then, a lot. But that fear still gets handed down from generation to generation. This whole idea of you don't snitch to the police. We try to keep this in the community and handle it ourselves. But sadly, it doesn't get handled. The problem gets worse. I mean, look at Chicago. It's that glorification of that thug culture, along with the path to easy money through drugs. It's not good. And that mixed dude that just did that speech at the BET Awards, he doesn't realize that BET is owned by white guys. Why? Because the Black people that started BET sold it. So there he's accepting an award from ultimately white people that he's talking shit against. His mom in the audience, I don't think she clapped. She might not have been too happy about it. There's just so much to be said about this specific topic that I can't put it into just one video. That's why I'm splitting up into parts. Later on, I'm going to be having conversations with other Black Americans and other mixed people, see where their views are. And that's it. If you liked the video, click the like button. This video will go up on Facebook and my YouTube channel. So if you like what I have to say, go subscribe. Take it easy, guys, and stay safe.